Hello everyone, so we are going to study about force and effects of force. At the end of this video, you will be able to define force, determine the effects of force, give daily life examples where force leads to change in dimension or change in state of motion. So let's get started. So how do we define force? Force is a push or pull on an object. When does the force act? Force comes into play only when there is an interaction between at least two objects. That is, two or more objects must interact for a force to act. Let us try and understand these two statements with a few examples. Kicking a ball is an example of push. The two objects that are interacting here are the ball and your leg. When you kick the ball, you apply force on the ball with your leg. Pressing the button is another example of push. The two objects that interact here are the button and your finger. When you press the button, you apply a force on the button with your finger. Drawing a bucket of water from the well is an example of pull. As I said earlier that more than two objects can also interact for a force to act. So here we have the rope, hand, pulley and the bucket of water which together interact for a force to act and bring the bucket of water up from the well. Opening a drawer is another example of pull, because when you apply a force with your hand to open the drawer, it moves towards you. The two objects that interact here are your hand and the drawer. Now let us look at some of the effects of force, that is, the changes that force can bring on an object. Force can change the state of motion of an object, that is, change in speed, change in direction of motion, or both change in speed and direction. It can also change the shape or size of an object. Now let us look at some of the examples to understand these statements. Let us try to understand the first statement. Now imagine that you are sitting on a stationary car. Here the speed of the car is 0 and it is said to be at rest. You start driving the car and increase its speed using the accelerator. Now you can drive towards left or right by applying a force on the steering wheel. The direction of motion of the car changes here. When your destination is near, you will decrease the speed of the car by applying a force on the brakes and ultimately stop it. The state of motion now changes from motion to rest. So this is how force can change the state of motion of an object. Now let us understand the second statement. When you press the dough, you apply a force on the dough with your hands. As a result, the shape and hence the size of the dough changes. Similarly, when you squeeze the tube of the toothpaste, the shape of the tube changes.